Meeting of Waynesboro City Council. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. Mr. Allen will not be joining us tonight, but I'm sure he's watching. And Mr. Short, would you please lead us in the pledge?
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Short. For those in attendance this evening, if you wish to speak during the citizen comment period, please sign up on the sheet in the back of chambers. Item 2 is the adoption of the meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Is there any discussion? All in favor of adopting the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda passes 4-0. Item 3 is matters from mayor. I would like to congratulate our newest members of City Council who will begin their 4-year terms in January. Lori Struthers for Ward A, Jeremy Sloat at large, and Terry will be returning for a 3rd term as our Ward B representative, and I guess 3rd time's the charm.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Moving on to item 4, that's matters from council. Would anybody have anything to add?
I just echo congratulations to incoming members and to both Mr. Allen and Mayor Williams and your service to the community. So thank you. We'll have more to say about that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. And also just gratitude to all of the volunteers and our election officials for running a really outstanding election day and all the preparation and everything that goes into it ahead of time. And then gratefully and humbly just thank you for the opportunity to continue to serve our community. So.
Very good. Anybody else? Okay. Item 5 is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the consent agenda passes 4-0. Moving on to item 6, and that is to acknowledge the Waynesboro Public Library staff and the staff of the Central Shenandoah Valley Office on Youth for the recent individual and departmental awards. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I could take a second, I'd like to work my way intentionally through this list and open with some personal remarks about conversations that we have together as manager and council and that you have with your constituents about what taxpayers realize for their tax money that they pay and the various fees that they pay. And I think it's natural to think that oftentimes we look to community improvement projects and capital investments, so whether that's a park project, a playground project, a road project, a bridge, improvement to a school or a new school, those are the things that often respond to questions from taxpayers about what do I get for my money? I think then naturally and sometimes gradually, folks then begin to realize that, well, in addition to the capital investment that occurs and the infrastructure that is furnished to the community, there are essential and important services that are delivered. And I think folks come to realize fairly quickly that the water and sanitary sewer and trash collection, public safety services, whether that's fire or law enforcement or rescue, first responder, EMS, and then the quality of life services that we deliver through either the library, the Office on Youth, or Parks and Recreation are often realized as value for their taxpayer money as well. I'd like to take this opportunity this evening to celebrate not just those essential services, but services that have been recognized as exceptional in nature. And whether that's a national recognition or a statewide recognition, I think it's important, and I'm especially proud and grateful of our staff who not only deliver quality service, but do that in a way that's especially innovative or exceptional in terms of quality or innovation. And so this evening, we have occasion to acknowledge 4 such awards for the Waynesboro Public Library and the Office on Youth. And I'd like to begin with the Rising Star Award. This is presented by the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services, and was presented to the Waynesboro Public Library in 2024 and awarded to Rachel McDowell, who is our Outreach and Engagement Coordinator. And she accepted that award at the national conference. This award highlights the achievements of an individual new to the profession who displays passion for the bookmobile and outreach profession. Since starting at the Waynesboro Public Library in September of 2022, Rachel has done an amazing job raising awareness of the Waynesboro Public Library and bringing our resources out into the community. And she has worked hard to developing strategies, and we're strengthening relationships with numerous organizations in Waynesboro. This is reflected and evidenced in the letters of recommendation she received, including staff within the Waynesboro Economic Development and Tourism Division, the Office on Youth, Valley Program for Aging Services, LifeWorks Project, Summit Square Retirement Community, River Edge Rehabilitation and Nursing, when the library applied for this award. And naturally, we feel very fortunate to have Rachel. The second award that we're recognizing in the library for the library and their staff is the Innovative Service Program. It's presented by the Association of Rural and Small Libraries, and this too was awarded in 2024, September of 2024 to be more precise. And this Innovative Service Award is presented to libraries or library workers who demonstrate exceptional creativity in serving their communities. The Community in Motion Book Bus is a collaborative community project to bring library books and other resources to underserved areas in Waynesboro. Using a repurposed school resource van, the Community in Motion travels to housing developments, community events throughout Waynesboro with a collection of library books, library card sign-up, and rotating selection of giveaways from the Office on Youth. Other community organizations, including the YMCA and the Waynesboro Redevelopment Housing Authority, also use the bus to distribute information about their services. So in this case, we're not only bringing library services into the community, but also other human services and need-related service to build health in the community and build connection to the municipal organization and other service organizations. The American Rural and Small Library Association recognized Community in Motion for collaboration across multiple community organizations and for making creative use of these available resources to provide bookmobile services without the budget for a new bookmobile. These visits foster meaningful connections with the community. Jamie has led the library's participation in this project, that's Jamie Kohler, and we receive strong support and collaboration from the Office on Youth. So I'm always particularly gratified when you see municipal agencies working together and then also working with non-municipal agencies to build health in the community. Finally, where the library is concerned, they were the recipients of the 2024 Outstanding Children's Program for libraries under 25,000 in population. It's awarded for Waynesboro's Play and Learn program. The grantor is the Virginia Public Library Directors Association, and this was awarded in March of 2024. This was the brainchild of our youth services librarian, Jamie Kohler. Play and Learn is a weekly program for children ages 0 to 6 with a variety of activities designed to boost early learning skills, improve preschool readiness. Started in the aftermath of the COVID closures, Play and Learn provides contained but relatively unstructured environment for children to play and interact, naturally learning social and emotional skills as well as developing physical skills such as fine motor control and pattern recognition. The VPLDA recognized Play and Learn for addressing specific post-COVID community needs, making use of a relatively small budget to provide service to large numbers of children and families. At the time of the award, the application was submitted in early 2024. Play and Learn had a record total attendance of over 1,700 individuals and a cost of about $500. So a great testimony to creativity, effectiveness, and efficiency. So I'm going to come back to the library in a second, but I'm going to move forward and recognize the Central Shenandoah Office on Youth Champions in Action Award. Prevention Connections is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to support Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth and promote health through nutrition, increased physical activity, and tobacco use prevention. Prevention Connections' first ever Champions in Action, which is accessible exclusively to Virginia Families Health, Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth funded Healthy Community Action Team. The Prevention Connections Board of Directors reviewed 23 proposals, and the Central Shenandoah Office on Youth of Waynesboro's Walk and Wheel is one of the 8 proposals approved. The Champions in Action Award provides flexible funding to collaboratives that are aligned with at least one of the action plan's 8 healthy behaviors. We have been awarded $15,388 to support our obesity prevention efforts, specifically to expand our Safe Routes to School bike education program and to establish a mountain bike club with Cape Collins Middle School utilizing the trails at Sunset Park. Funding will allow the Office on Youth to buy materials so that students' lack of bike ownership is not a barrier to participation. The club will contribute to long-term change by building on the biking skills learned in elementary school and providing structured opportunities for mountain biking. It will encourage moving more and the development and continuation of healthy activities that will carry over into high school years and beyond. So the Office on Youth is recognized for that. So at this time, I'd like to invite Susan Verson, the director of the library, to offer remarks on the awards and maybe upcoming events. And then Ms. Newman, if you would come forward and offer a comment, or Steve, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, my staff didn't want to talk, so I'm just going to embarrass them anyway. Obviously, 2024 has been a great year at Waynesboro Public Library, and these awards are a wonderful recognition of the talented staff, programs, and resources we have. They also highlight our mission of connecting people with information, resources, entertainment, and each other. The focus at the library has been on creating connections and both creating and serving our community. Both Rachel and Jamie, who are sitting right there,
I was going to make them stand.
make them stand. So Rachel McDowell is in the pink.
Can we?
Yes, yes. And Jamie Kolar's in the floral dress. They both exemplify this focus and commitment as well as incredible creativity. Their programs and their very positions themselves highlight the importance of moving library resources and services outside of the walls of the library. This kind of commitment is supported by all the staff at the library, I need to say, from our circulation staff on the front lines, our technical service staff who prepare all our items for circulation, the marketing staff who create publicity for everything we do, and our librarians who create programs, curate collections, and answer all sorts of questions. Everyone on staff has the opportunity to participate in outreach and make sure that WPL can be in all sorts of unexpected places. Waynesboro is a wonderful community, and that supports its library and its services and all the resources. And I just wanted to take this time to thank the council for your support, the city administration, the whole community, as we expand the traditional boundaries of the library. And of course, I can't miss the opportunity to tell you about the things that are coming, as Mr. Hamp said, so here they are. November 20th, we have a digital art program coming to the library. November 23rd, we have a dulcimer concert. And December 7th, we have a winter market, our second winter market, and Morning with Santa, plus a Friends of the Library book sale. So, and again, if anybody wants to give out candy canes, just let me know. But again, thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Susan.
So I refer to him as Steve. This is Steve Guerin. He's our Safe Routes to School coordinator.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I'm going to adapt here because I have in my little paper here much of what you've already said. I don't want to be redundant. So I will skip around a little bit, so bear with me. I am Steve Guerin. I am the old guy in the Office on Youth. And among the elementary school crowd, I am known as Mr. Steve, or my alter ego, Bike Man. I actually brought my bike helmet with me, but I wasn't that bold to put it on. So yes, I'm excited to report that we did receive this $15,000 grant so that we can establish this mountain biking club at Cape Collins. And with that money, we will purchase 14 middle school sized mountain bikes so that, yes, lack of a bike is not a barrier to participation. We'll also purchase an enclosed bike trailer in which to store and tow the bikes, bike helmets, and all the necessary gear. And as Mike said, we are very excited to take advantage of the trails at Sunset Park, 1 mile built, 3 more to go, and also at Montgomery Hall. So I'm going to take a moment to tell you, I've been using the pronoun we, and I want to tell you who we are. Mike referenced Waynesboro Walk and Wheel. So what that is, it's a healthy community action team that is funded by the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth, and yes, that is a mouthful. With the purpose of reducing and preventing childhood obesity. So our current members include Augusta Health, Project Grows, and a number of Waynesboro agencies such as Community Development Department, Parks and Recreation, Public Library, the public schools, Public Works, us, Office on Youth, and some individual community members. And just to put out the notice, we are more than happy to get more people to join us in this effort at preventing childhood obesity. So as Micah said, we are focusing on getting kids moving more. That's our primary strategy. We like to disguise exercise as outdoor fun. Anything to get them out, get them to develop new skills that can be lifelong skills like bicycling. And it's important here because I think you're aware that according to the 2022 Augusta Health Community Needs Health Assessment, another big mouthful, the childhood obesity rate for ages 5 to 17 in Waynesboro was 22%, which is above both the state and national averages. And the number of, the percentage of children that were overweight was also 12%. So you can think of it as like 1 in 3 children in Waynesboro, at least in 2022, was living at an unhealthy weight. So we want to do something about that. So as I said, moving more is our biggest strategy. This mountain biking club is going to be a great thing because it's going to continue the bike safety education that I've been doing in elementary schools for the last 3 years in grades 3 through 5. It's going to complement other activities that are going on through Parks and Rec, like they have their Girls on the Run program that they helped organize last year. An amazing, powerful program for young girls. My daughter did it when she was young. That was a while ago. What else? Yes, and we also sponsor Walk to School Week and other walking-focused activities and try to get kids out in nature through nature walks and hikes and that kind of thing. It's going to be an awkward transition, but I also want to talk about the traffic playground that's soon to open, the Rotary Traffic Playground, of which you've all heard so much and are so excited about, which will be a tremendous resource for the city and also a great resource for the Safe Routes to School program to put kids on an actual thing that looks like a real roadway where they can learn traffic safety as they learn their biking skills. Is going to be awesome. So going forward, I'm dreaming of possibly creating a bike club in the high school so that our youth can have organized and structured biking experiences in elementary school, middle school, and high school, and hopefully one day establishing school-based hiking clubs as well. So anyhow, thank you for your time. Let me tell you a little bit of what we're about. Again, Waynesboro Walk and Wheel. We have our own website. We have our own Facebook page. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My granddaughter participates in the Girls on the Run, and I believe they have their big 5K coming up at the end of the month. Yeah.
Josh and I tried out the first Waynesboro's first roundabout the other day. As a matter of fact, on the traffic garden. So coming along, pretty cool.
Very good. Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but Thank you for all that you've done, but you're more than welcome to leave as well. Okay. All right. Give him a minute. Item 7 is to receive an update regarding the Hopeman Parkway Bridge project and corresponding grant agreement. And I'll call on Mr. Hamp for that.
Yes, ma'am. This is a process update for City Council. You'll recall that earlier this year, the Hopeman Parkway Bridge was posted for weight restrictions due to the condition of the bridge that was realized during the annual assessment of the bridge, part of our overall bridge assessment program. My message for you this evening is that the grant agreement for the bridge replacement in the amount of $7.64 million has been executed. The project was accelerated by the Virginia Department of Transportation and the Federal Highways Administration from pre-application to final evaluation and acceptance due to the condition of the structure and the amount of data collection and engineering analysis the city had performed early in the grant process. So, helpful effort on the part of Public Works there, and helpful partnership with the Department of Transportation and Federal Highways. Because the application was fast-tracked, it was submitted without a formal final application that in most cases would have included a council resolution accepting the funds. And in lieu of that document and process component, we submitted that application to to the VDOT project manager using a blanket approval resolution that was established in fiscal year 2023. And that's just not the way we would have ordinarily done it, but a completely acceptable manner in which to proceed. No funds have been accepted for this project to date. However, we are anticipating to get notice to begin engineering on the project at any time. And this evening, I'd just like to bring your awareness to this point and have you be conspicuous in the fact that we did not do a project-specific resolution, but rather relied on the blanket approval resolution from VDOT. Is there anything else in that message that I need to cover from a financial standpoint?
There were funds appropriated in anticipation.
Okay.
That should come up. There were funds appropriated during the CIP process in anticipation of a grant award, so that as soon as grants were received, expenditure could start towards engineering to keep that project on the most expedient timeline possible.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from council?
Is there any timeline speculated?
I don't have a timeline information this evening, no, sir.
Anybody else? Okay. There
Thank
is,
you.
thank you, Mr. Hamp. There's no action required there tonight. That was just merely for informational purposes. Item 8 is to receive a presentation on the final draft proposed cottage housing ordinance, and I'll call on Ms. Tate.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Months ago, we held a joint work session with council and planning commission to kind of begin the infant stages of a discussion of what a cottage court housing ordinance may look like. After that time, based on information we received from both groups during that work session, city staff did a lot of research on other localities' ordinances and worked to kind of draft. And again, I reiterate that this is a draft of a cottage court ordinance. It was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission at their September meeting, and tonight no action is needed. Essentially, this is just presentation of that draft ordinance to kind of walk through what is included, and there would be a public hearing at a future date on this draft ordinance. So kind of just a general definition, or looking at what we mean when we talk about cottage housing, or what the purpose for this new development or development type could be. It's a grouping of small houses that are arranged around a common area or areas. It's often referred to as a way or a part of the missing middle of housing types, designed to promote a sense of community Houses within cottage housing courts, based on this draft ordinance, can be detached, attached, or townhomes. And then it appeals to a variety of people, young professionals and couples, maybe empty nesters, older adults, single adults, or small families, as these are typically smaller sized houses, smaller sized units. This kind of just shows a general layout of cottage development and kind of a communal parking area. And again, this image kind of shows what some of that common space could look like, and kind of the orientation of those homes around that common area. So in order to have cottage court housing be a possibility in the city of Waynesboro, there are multiple places within the ordinance that amendments need to take place. So I'm just going to kind of briefly highlight those. So section 98-2.3 in our zoning ordinance is this nice graphic chart that defines all of our housing types, so that when you go to your zoning district and you talk about what uses are permitted, there's a definition associated with them. So we would need to add cottage court within these definitions. So you can see we define single family detached and attached, two family houses, corner lot duplexes, we define multiplexes, we define townhomes, a multifamily building, an apartment, or upper story residential. So we would be adding cottage court, and with some associated images like all the others, and that is that it's a group of small residential buildings that may be made up of detached, attached, or townhouse units or tiny houses. The majority of the units should front around a common open space with private open space provided for each unit. A cottage court may be developed on individual lots or with a common form of ownership. We would also need to amend section 98-2.4 to permit cottage courts by conditional use permit. And so just a reminder that conditional use permits are subject to discretionary review. Staff evaluates those requests. The Planning Commission makes recommendations, and then council would have to ultimately approve any request for cottage court housing. So if the ordinance I'm reviewing with you this evening is to be adopted in the future, it doesn't allow any cottage court housing to happen without discretionary approval by council. So it allows developers, individuals to make application, to hold the necessary public hearings, and all of the requirements that are needed after that. So I want to point that out this evening. Just to go through, here are all the different types of zoning ordinances that we have in place. And so what the draft ordinance does is it would allow cottage courts in our single family residential large lot, single family residential small lot, traditional residential, our most flexible general residential, mixed residential for residential and business uses, multifamily, residential office, mixed business and local business. And again, it would only allow them in those districts if approved by council through a conditional use permit. Another section is that we would need to amend section 98-10.3 to add a definition for what a cottage court is. So we've defined cottage housing, but then our ordinance determines a cottage court. And so that definition is a group of small, either detached houses, attached houses, or townhouses. Limit of 4 attached units per structure and up to 50% of the development. So essentially, when someone wants to do a cottage court, they would have to meet those requirements if they were interested in townhomes or tiny homes fronting around a common open space. And then a cottage court may be developed on individual lots or with a common form of ownership. And that shows that definition of kind of those specific limitations related to townhouses, limitations on the number that can be attached, and that an entire development wouldn't be made up of those, but potentially could be half. And then finally, I think the last section to amend is section 98-4.2 would be to add a new section to go through all the use standards that would apply to any type of cottage court application. So a very important part of use standards or a zoning ordinance is to define your purpose and intent. So the purpose of the cottage court housing type is to promote infill development and redevelopment within established neighborhoods that is consistent in style and materials with existing surrounding structures. By situating many housing units in small spaces, cottage courts are an efficient use of land and cost-effective in delivery of city services. The cottage court housing type encourages innovative site planning and variety in housing types to meet the needs of diverse populations, including young professionals, older adults, and empty nesters and small families. Cottage court housing is pedestrian scaled and community oriented. It provides developers and property owners the flexibility to develop projects that strengthen existing neighborhoods. And so, as you're aware, having a purpose and intent statement is very helpful. With this being a discretionary review and a conditional use permit being required to develop this, you as the council that would be approving it would have the ability to determine if that application meets the purpose and intent that you've defined in your ordinance. So that's why it's a really important component. So the general use standards that pertain to the cottage court housing, it kind of talks through having the zoning administrator, if there are any conflicts with other provision of the ordinance, that the use standards would take precedence and would preempt any expressly conflicting standards. So as you can see, we've gone through and tried to work through any of the areas where there may be conflicts, but in a complex, long zoning ordinance, sometimes there are areas that you find conflict, and so this helps cover that. And then, as was mentioned in the purpose and intent section, the cottage court development really should endeavor to fit in or be respectful of the context of the surrounding neighborhood. The architectural details shall be submitted with the conditional use permit application to show how the development will be compatible with the broader neighborhood. So if a developer submits an application, city staff will be asking for all of these things, what architectural styles, what materials will be used, and then, as in all requests, we evaluate how those meet the intent and use standards of the ordinance. As I mentioned previously, cottage court housing may be developed on separate parcels or on a single parcel of land. So it could be subdivided without road frontage, to have individual privately owned lots, or it could be multiple units placed on one piece of property, essentially how multifamily or apartment development works. So if cottage court housing is individual parcels, all common areas or shared improvements would be dedicated to and maintained by a homeowners association or condominium association. And then some concern, and one thing that is included in the draft ordinance is that cottage courts shall not be used as short-term rentals except within limited business and mixed-use business districts. And I think essentially that is, you want these to fit into the character of the neighborhood, and sometimes things that turn over frequently, like short-term rentals, can detract from neighborhood feel, and so this limits any short-term rental use of a cottage court unless it's located in one of those business districts. And these images just kind of go back to the different ways they can be constructed. As you can see from this example, it's done as a condominium style development. So the outline is one parcel of land, but you have these various units located on that one parcel. And then a different example, the subdivision style, where they're individually sold and then there are common elements. So that just is representative of the two types that the development could undertake. So some additional use standards. If the project is to be developed on a single parcel of land with no intention of subdividing it, as that first example, then the applicant will be required to submit a major site plan in accordance with the city ordinance. So the same way we handle multifamily development now, business development, that if the CUP is approved, they do have to submit a major site development plan to make sure that it meets all city standards. And then projects developed as a subdivision with units on individual lots, they would be required to meet the major and minor subdivision plat requirements that we currently take through Planning Commission and review by city staff. Another use standard requirement is that there be an area for community trash receptacles or dumpsters, and that should be shown on the preliminary plat or site plan. And then all requirements for utilities shall apply. So then the use standards get into unit sizes, that there shall be no minimum size requirements for a cottage court dwelling. However, prevailing building code requirements would apply. So just to be clear, the city currently does not have any requirement on the square footage size of a home other than what is needed to meet building code requirements. And so that is the same here. We've identified in the draft ordinance that cottage court units, so that's the actual unit is limited to a maximum of 1,200 square feet of finished floor area and a maximum of 1,700 square feet of gross square footage, and that gross square footage would include porches, decks, patios. And so that kind of provides that maximum range of size. And then, you know, if there was a developer who was interested in doing kind of a similar idea with larger units, we do have a planned unit development ordinance within the city that allows developers to kind of go through that extra step of drafting their own ordinances. So if you had interest from developers to do larger size units, they'd be able to utilize the planned unit development ordinance to do so, which allows them to write their own ordinance and to create flexibility within that development. Parking standards are outlined, so 1.25 spaces per unit are required, and it does note that if it falls between two, that it would be rounded up. Parking areas rather than individual driveways are encouraged. Parking areas should be clustered in logical areas throughout the development, and if the property has existing alley access, then parking areas should be accessed from the alley. And so you'll see from some of the visuals with our developed cottage courts, you know, based on kind of the smaller size of the homes, you don't want kind of the car to be the prominent thing that you see when you look at the development. And so some of these standards help kind of talk through ways that developers can lay out their site to make it more visually appealing. And you'll see with many of the examples that I'll show kind of different ways of providing parking, and it's kind of how the developer wants to approach the development and what they see is needed in the market. But parking can be located within an accessory structure, such as a multi-car carport or garage. But such structure shall not be attached to individual cottages, as it could create a scale issue, except that single car garages and carports may be attached to the rear of individual cottages. So you could, you know, a developer could choose to have an individual parking situation or more of a multi-carport or multi-garage. Parking shall be oriented to ensure the cottage housing units are the main focal point of the development, and parking areas should be screened with landscaping. So this shows, again, just a layout of some cottages. Here kind of are their fronting, or their common areas that they front on, kind of little pocket parks or open space greens, and then they have kind of parking kind of centralized on this side of the development. Some other examples in this scenario, I think they're actually using like multi-carports, and you can see those kind of with these overhang areas here that shade the cars. And then back to this example, they have individual driveways and access from an alley road. So there are kind of multiple ways that they could be laid out depending on the individual situation. And again, another example, they're attached garages, so they're attached to each other, but they're detached from the housing units, and they're kind of located in a central area. And you can see those attached garages. So some additional use standards, they'd be required to have 400 square feet of common space per cottage court unit, And the common areas should consist of a central space or a series of interconnected spaces for the community. And then at least 50% of the units shall abut the common area, and all units shall be within reasonable walking distance of that common open space. And the common open area shall have cottages abutting at least two sides. So just trying to have layouts that make sense and provide benefit to those that live within the community and that's aesthetically pleasing. The next gets into kind of stormwater and access to sidewalks and public walkways that meet ADA accessibility standards. And then, ensuring that physically constrained wetlands or steep slopes can't be counted toward that common area. So you're not like maximizing the density and making unusable space as your common area requirement. These are just kind of some of those same pictures that show how there are these walkways that kind of everyone within that community can access the open space. I think this is like a little community building or community center that they have there, and everybody's within reasonable walking distance. This shows kind of some common area within walking distance, and then kind of walkways throughout to get to all of the individual units. So that covers the common space that's required, and then also each cottage housing unit shall be provided a minimum of 200 square feet of usable private open space. So everybody, you might want to go and meet with your neighbors out in that common area, but you also might want to have a grill and a patio in your own private space. So each cottage housing unit shall be provided a minimum of 200 square feet of usable private open space that's screened or otherwise separated from the common area, and it can include your front or backyard, a gardening area, a patio, or front porch. And then no dimension of private open space shall be less than 8 square feet, essentially just to make sure everybody has a usable space. And how that looks when you lay it out in some of these developments. So this is the common area. In these situations, they have a backyard, back patio, on the developments, and others have, or all have, a front porch. In this specific example, common area, small front yards with porches, so that is representative of what's public and what's your private space. Orientation of units, so cottages that have facades that face the public street shall avoid blank walls or the appearance that the units turn their backs to the street by including one or more of the following. So as you can see, all of these units, you want to kind of front or orient around the common area. So often you might have the back side of a house that doesn't have as many architectural features be turned to the street. And so to avoid that, there are some requirements here that you would have to have changes in exterior siding material or paint color, windows, building modulation with a depth measuring at least 1 foot, and then views of front doors or porches to create a visually pleasing community. And then the majority of units shall be oriented around that common area. For area and dimensional standards, in order for someone to establish a cottage court, the parcel of land would have to be a minimum of 10,000 square feet. The setbacks that are listed here, don't think of those as the individual setback if it is done in a subdivided way, but think of that as the perimeter of the whole development. So those would be the setbacks from the front and rear, and then the side streets, either the street side or the interior. And if you have multiple street sides, then you're abiding by that on both. The density minimum, so if someone wanted to establish a cottage court, we're not talking about just someone doing one home on a piece of property. The definition of a cottage court is they'd have to have a minimum of 4 units or a maximum of 20 units. Lot size, and that's a little bit confusing. That's why we identified there's a tract minimum, but the individual lot, there's no minimum. Essentially, that would be governed by all of the other requirements. Building separation has to be at least 10 feet between units, and that really comes from building code and fire code. It is identified that if the eaves of a roof or other projection extend into that buffer, fire-resistant construction is required. So there are some ways around that 10-foot spacing, but if no fire-resistant materials are used, then there is a 10-foot space between units. And then building height maximum at 35 feet, and notes that units that may have 2 stories would require a step-back condition, so they're not kind of over-towering potentially other units, so that second floor would need to step back. Buffer requirements are determined on a case-by-case basis during the conditional use permit process. And, staff went back and forth on this one. We certainly have buffer requirements that we utilize now and would use to guide us as we reviewed these projects. But they have certain width requirements, and sometimes with, kind of this more defined area and unique examples for each different parcel, it might be best that those kind of be defined during that conditional use permit process, where the Planning Commission and you as council could have a great deal of input into what that buffer requirement was. And then lastly, the last standard is kind of a catch-all because, there are innovative ways that these can be done, and it talks about alternative standards. So if there are designs that do not comply with all of the provisions above, they may be considered and approved during the conditional use permit process. So essentially, we'd be looking to say, are those deviations? Is it something that council agrees with? And is it also something that meets that overall intent and purpose of the ordinance, which you'll remember is very much about fitting into the context of the existing neighborhood in an infill development situation. And I only have like 2 slides left. The Saul housing study did confirm that there is a housing shortage, and it did provide data that there's a discrepancy in the size and type of units available. So 1 and 2 person households make up 65% of the households in the region, but units with 3 or more bedrooms make up 70% of the region's housing stock. So potentially this could be a way of meeting that need for 1 and 2 person households. So cottage housing is another tool to help address housing. It's added as an allowable use to the zoning ordinance, but as I've made clear, applicants would still need to go through a conditional use permit process. We anticipate that it could be used for vacant infill lots or lots that are in need of redevelopment, and may create a less expensive housing option, less public infrastructure required, and smaller houses over a greater density. And then just kind of a quick reminder of the history. City Council and Planning Commission held a joint work session to just discuss the very concept of it. And the Planning Commission did review this draft ordinance at a work session, and then also at a separate meeting, held a public hearing and recommended approval of the ordinance at their September regular meeting. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for all the work you put into to this. It was quite extensive, I can see. Are there any questions from my fellow council members?
The short-term rental part of it, that's all types of short-term rental, Airbnb, does that consider all types of short-term rental? I can't get the words out. Short-term.
Yeah, so the state has defined short-term rental, and I believe there's like a 60-day number on what that is, and I can't remember if the city has adopted that definition or not. But in drafting it, the thought process was anybody who's renting one of those for less than 60 days would be considered short-term rental. But if it was somebody just renting out the property for whatever lease month, 6 months, year or more, that would be permissible. So yeah, more of those short Airbnb type situations.
Any other questions, comments?
I get a few. So first one is I'd echo Mayor Williams, and yeah, thank you for putting this together. I think it's an exciting potential tool. I guess the first one is just a question on if you could offer a distinction between the track minimum and the lot minimum, in that, I think of adaptive reuse and some existing platted parcels, throughout the city that are going to fall well below a 10,000 square foot track. So maybe if you could just sort of detail that out a little bit.
Yeah, so with that, we were kind of back and forth and in doing a lot of research of other localities and identifying kind of 4 units being what could make a cottage court, and then walking back, walking back into that number with the parking, the small private space that's required, the communal space that's required. That seemed like a reasonable number as we worked through it. We didn't do any kind of more detailed to scale layouts, so that's flexible, but that was kind of how we worked back to get to that. Like, okay, if you have the setbacks and you have this and you have that, that seemed like 4 would be maybe the most that could potentially fit. But happy to explore that more.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. I mean, but think of the tree streets, and there are, obviously we've got their underlying historic district ordinance, which has places some limitations on development. But we also have, as we've seen, a number of lots that or homes that sat on 3 individual parcels, right? And now folks, a couple of them have opted to sell off the 2, and they've developed, traditional single-family homes. And but in both cases, those lots are 7,500 square feet, right? And so that's where I'm like, so I guess the distinction between tract, that definition for the minimum, and then a variable lot size, I guess that's where I'm just stuck on a little bit.
Yeah, so the tract would be kind of that overall. I mean, if someone was to combine those units into one, they could have at least 4 cottage court units on there. But then if they were to subdivide that and into individual sellable lots, there is no minimum.
Okay, I got you.
But in order to do a cottage court, you would need 10,000 square
10,000.
feet to get at least 4.
Okay,
But then how you got your individual sellable lot, we're not setting requirements
so you
on it.
could theoretically do the 7,500 square foot lot with an aspiration of setting 2 of the tiny home units on the
Yeah,
cottages.
so
on
I mean, there could be a
parcel.
change to lower that and to say 2 is a minimum for a cottage court.
Right. And so a couple of the distinctions here on the project perimeter building setback is, so in a traditional neighborhood setting or whatever, R, fill in the number that you want, I recall that our side setbacks are 10 foot, and where this is proposing a 5-foot setback.
I believe that we have sides that go down to 5.
Okay.
I'm
That would be my only thing,
Yeah.
is that if you're, again, the context of the area and the neighborhood setting that you're sort of allowing, we for accessory units, accessory structures, those are 5 foot.
Yeah.
But for habitat, for structures that you're going to live in, it's I think off memory that it's 10
And I
foot.
think I'm thinking of if you have 2 streets, your one might be 9 and one might be 5.
Totally.
There's something like
It's
that.
the ones that are in this sandwiched in the middle of a block.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that's where it would get tricky. So that's what I was.
Yeah, be happy to look at those and make sure. And just kind of to clarify, which I'm sure you are aware, but it was hard for me to wrap my mind around, is like we're not talking about setbacks like it for each of these individual parcels, if that's how it's being done, but just that parcel as a whole.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the side
Yeah.
setbacks. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and actually, that's the other question. So in the table, it says a side interior setback as 5 foot, but then the context of the fire barrier of if there's any eave overhang or protrusion out of the side of the structure, it would have to be
10.
fire retardant, right? So it had to be 10 foot. So
And I guess it's hard because we're thinking about these in specific infill situations, and there might be a situation where there is nothing on the other side. But yeah, that's something we should check and
the only
look.
reason I'm saying it is that I'm thinking if somebody picks up the ordinance and they're excited about doing the work and maybe they do a little ground game on it 1st and they come in, we may need to be more specific, and I know it's going to be nuanced, right? Because
Sure.
the middle of the street's going to be completely different than the corner of the
Yeah.
street, and that's so to provide the maximum flexibility because every site's going to be different. but you may, by setting the minimum so low, you may set up a case where somebody thinks that
excited
they
it
can
doesn't
come and
work.
do something that isn't really gonna fly.
That's helpful.
The other one was, there was a one, I can't remember what slide it was on, I should have written the slide down, number down, but, it was the should versus shall, and I can't remember why I wrote that down. Oh, I think it might be here.
Parking
Parking
should be
areas should be clustered in logical areas. Is that, and the other one was parking areas rather than infill driveways are
Or
encouraged.
Yeah.
I would almost say that because this is really an opportunity to not only provide accessible and entry point into the housing market, and that's exciting, it's also creating a really strong ability for someone to monetize the investment, right? So someone's going to be able to go in there and take a lot that you may have been able to flip for $300,000, $400,000 with a single SFD detached home, and you're going to be able to monetize this at a near equal, if not higher rate, by 20%, 10, 15%. So with that is that I was almost kind of just to throw out as an idea of should that language be stronger? That so parking areas are preferred, right, and not even address the individual driveway, because I think individual driveways just generally, for at least ones that I'm familiar with in other parts of the country, it doesn't work too well. And then the other one is parking areas shall be clustered in logical areas around the development instead of should, because I think it's one of those things you're going to open up. Someone's going to come in and think they have a great super solution, and because we're also offering, even if you don't meet these minimum criteria,
There's an alternative.
You can bring it back to council,
And then we would be calling it out as like, okay, this is an alternative standard. It doesn't meet the strict rule of law, but you have the ability to kind of waive that.
and it might be something that we might want to, because it's just uncharted territory a little bit for our little community, is to maybe revisit additional flexibility down the road.
Sure. Yep.
But maybe a little more stringent up front.
Makes sense.
Is just the thought. And then I think my last question, I promise, is oh, actually, I'm sorry, I have two. All right, so the other one that which actually was the first one. So how would we prevent? I don't think the intent of this is so that a developer or whomever, a developer, acquires a parcel, 10,000 square feet, and goes and builds 4 tiny lots, cottages, and then goes and rents them out for $1,500 a month. Right, that's not the goal here. So I noted in bullet 4 of the general use standards, if the cottage court housing units are individually saleable, all common areas or shared improvements shall be dedicated to an HOA or condominium association as applicable. And I guess the question is that we would want to entertain that. That the intent here, the purpose is to drive down the cost of homeownership for folks who are 1-2 person households, period. It's not for somebody to come in. Now, granted, all of them could be put it on the open market. Somebody could go in there, scoop them all up, and rent them out. That's it. But in terms of what we're trying to do from a regulatory standpoint, that's not what we're looking to do. We're looking for all
Talking
these
about
things
not, they would all need to be on individual parcels.
Yeah, and I almost think that maybe should, and this might be too conservative, and I've looked for our legal counsel for some guidance on it, but I also would also entertain, in the same way that in the tree streets, if you want to go and tear down a house in the tree streets, you got to put it up for sale for a period of time, and it has to be at a fair market value available to anybody who wants to make an offer on it for a period of time before you can even consider taking it to the planning commission and ultimately council for approval for demolition. So in that case, would it be advisable to require that the homes are only available by individual sale, and that they all have to be marketed and available for a period of 12 months prior to? And I'm saying because when I'm using the Tree Street example, she's shaking her head no already, but I use the Tree Street example of like, we can prevent someone from moving forward with what their preferred option is in the tree streets on a fixed calendar schedule. And I'd be curious if there was any, I guess the first two ways to ask this question, Melissa, is one, can you require it where the parcels have to be made available through individual sale, the properties, the homes? And then two, can we ascribe a condition that they have to be made available to the open market for a period of time? No, in either case.
No, I mean, those are, again, go back to, Leslie's point about the purpose and intent. These are all CUPs, so you guys, if somebody brings forward something that is designed or implicated to be, for short-term rentals or long PCP, I'm buying all of them, and clearly he's not living in all of them. He's designed this, he's gonna rent them out. I mean, you can't alienate property, and you can't force people. I mean, people have property rights, so I mean, you can decide, no, this doesn't seem like you're trying to advance the purpose of it. Those things are gonna have to be weeded out and tested through the CUP process. There's, through the standards, we can maybe try to address some of your concerns, but to ascribe restrictions on property for who can sell it, before they can sell it,
That's the kind of things we're gonna have to work through this process, because I was doing my math as well. You've got a 10,000 square foot tract with the 400 square foot of common space, 200 square foot of private space, 1,700 square foot gross square footage. Those 4 tiny homes or cottage homes are going to be, that's gonna be a tight fit with all the others, the area you're needed. And if you bought a piece of property on the Tree Streets and decided to put 4 cottage homes in there, we have to think about the neighbors on either side as well.
Yeah, right.
I'm all for, I understand the need for housing, affordable housing, starter homes in Waynesboro, but we also gotta look out for the neighbors as well.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's something we're definitely gonna have to talk through, discuss, and see what our options and what our restrictions are before we go into even discussing it further.
Yeah, because it's almost like eyes wide open of if someone comes in to do a rezoning from an RS12 to an R5, right, or whatever, to a much higher density, a commercial enterprise of rental units. We're going to know that because of the zoning request. And I almost feel that in order to meter that, again, I just don't, the whole point of this is to create affordable access to starter homes. And I do fear that you could see companies like BlackRock or whatever kind of coming into a community and buying up a bunch of parcels and then just dumping these things out, and then $1,500 a month, because they're gonna make $6,000 in rent every month, and where they wouldn't be able to do that if it were just an SF, single family dwelling. So I almost wonder if the CUP should accompany, if the request is commercially motivated from a rental standpoint, is that the CUP should accompany an underlying rezoning request, right? So that we would change the density, that we would understand, the community would understand that particular applicant, and of course we're trying to do, I call this the what if bucket, right? Which I hate what if buckets. But
Necessary.
but it is one of those things of I just worry about the first 3 that come through, right? And like, if we don't ask in these questions, or need to start
Right.
thinking about it now. All right, well, then the last one, which, she's already telling me no, a bunch of other things. I'll try one more for you, Melissa, is so just a devil's advocate is, I understood, and I could totally be wrong, but I understood that a use table, so an allowable use table for, that a CUP must be made a type of accommodation, so whether or not it's a type of certain business classifications or otherwise, you can't make it a CUP in every district. You have to pick at least one district where it's allowed by right. I understood that in all cases, in Virginia, you have to have that a CUP that has to be allowed by right in at least one of your underlying districts.
I'm not either, but
Okay. I think it goes to, I read some case stuff and I might have sat in on a couple things about like, folks don't want certain establishments in their neighborhoods. So as a result, cities would go and say, well, adult entertainment uses, as an example, can't be in any of the districts. And so there's case law, I believe, that said, well, you have to make it available. You can't deny them of bureaucratic process in every instance. So most communities then allow it by right in industrial areas.
Use is residential,
Right.
so there is by right residential. It's not like
precluding,
living in a home is not like running or operating an adult entertainment business. The use is living, is residing in. So there are plenty of districts that have by right, single family, duplex, multifamily.
But I wouldn't allow this type of housing accommodation.
This type of housing,
Oh, I see. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, I see. I knew the answer was gonna be no. I just wanted to ask anyway. Okay. All right, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's right, because the uses,
residential.
the residential accommodation is still being made available. Okay. All right, that concludes
Okay,
my
well,
comments. Sorry.
the plan was to have the public hearing at the November 25th meeting, but in light of the questions that you're asking, are you still comfortable to move forward with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We would have.
I mean, that would just be the public
Just the
hearing.
public hearing,
So
yeah,
to
I mean,
hear input from
Right.
the community and
maybe,
then,
Just didn't know if
Decision
you
would
wanted
be
some
down
more
the road.
information before.
and maybe Bob will write a nice little story about it in the paper and might generate some questions
Sure.
and yeah, might get some folks come out and talk about it. So.
And then, just for 1 second, you all were thanking all the work, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank Alice and Tom Barge and our office city planner who did an extreme job on it, so. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. Did you have any questions? I didn't. You didn't say anything. Okay. Well, this ordinance will be subject to a public hearing on at the November 25th meeting, and then final consideration of the ordinance is planned for December 9th. Okay. All right. Item 9 is citizen comment period. Mr. Hamp. Okay. Again, just state your name, address for our records if you don't mind, and you have 4 minutes to address council.
Bad knee. Yeah, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My concern is when we were here for the last meeting for the project for the Main Street redesign, a comment was made that the city was approving a Wawa store to go in on the intersection of Hopeman and Main Street. And I just didn't believe that till I called and they told me, yeah, they're going to put a Wawa at that intersection, which personally I think is crazy, but there's no access to it if you're going towards town on Main. You have to make a U-turn at the intersection of Hopeman and Main Street, and then it's immediate right into the Wawa store. That's where their opening is right now. So you just hope there's nobody behind you going to make a left-hand turn with you, because you're going to be stopping right in front of them. And I was told that the county or the city did not do a traffic study for that area to determine what effect it would have on the traffic, because there's so many developments going in and out on Hopeman and ivy that are increasing the traffic flow on that intersection. We've lived here for 4 years, and it has grown. It's doubled in the time it takes me to get out of ivy, my complex. I used to just pull out. Not anymore. There's traffic flying down Ivy Street, coming out to Hopeman, heading towards town, and wherever they're going. But the other access that you can get to that place is you make a left-hand turn on Hopeman, but then you just go down to Park. But Park doesn't have an exit ramp or lane to get off of Hopeman. So you have to, it's just the opening between the islands. So if you don't pull off horizontal in that to make your left, the back of your car is sitting out on Hopeman. So you have all of that traffic coming behind you if you happen to be the second or third car in the lane. And if anybody's gone out and looked at the traffic on Main Street making left-hand turns into Hopeman, you see it's passed up a lot of times past the Enterprise car rental. You can have 12, 13, 14 cars piled up there to make a left-hand turn, and that's now. I can imagine what it's going to be in 2 or 3 years with all that housing developments that are going up out on Hopeman. So I don't know why they're allowing this, because it's going to be a real nightmare at that intersection when, after they take away the island on Main Street, and now everybody's got to either making left-hand turns or U-turns to get back to where they were used to be able to just make a left across on Main Street. They're taking out that middle left-hand turn lane. So the traffic is going to be a nightmare on Hopeman and Main Street, and they're going to put a Wawa right in the middle of the main intersection on Hopeman. It really doesn't make any sense. I think the traffic is going to just be a nightmare there, and I think it's just accidents waiting to happen. So, thank you for the time, but I don't know why it's going to be put there. It just doesn't belong. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. That's it? Okay. Item 10 is correspondence, calendar, and comments from the city manager.
Yes, we have 2 items. Mr. McCormick is going to help us with the first item.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hampton. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. So wanted to give council a quick update on the treasurer has been working through a scheduled upgrade on our utility and real estate payments module in our Munis product. The impetus for this was the intermediary between our product and Munis is going end of life. So they're going to a different credit card recipient. So on on Thursday, the treasurer will have some cash only time from 3:30 until 5:30 or 6 while they upgrade the credit card machines. And then Friday evening, excuse me, the CSS module where folks pay will come down for the weekend. And then it should come back up first thing Monday morning to a new module that's called Tyler Pay that will offer some more bells and whistles. Auto pay is one thing that we're working on, along with a wallet, along with the ability to use a shopping cart versus the current CSS module where you're paying for everything individually. We anticipate that on the CSS module, when it's brought down, there'll be a message that says that the module is down for maintenance over the weekend. Please revisit us Monday at 8 a.m. So that you can log in if you need to pay anything, and then Monday at 8 a.m. there'll be a redirect on that website to get to the new URL.
Just a customer service announcement on behalf of the treasurer. The item I have is a reminder that on December 7th at 6, the city will have its annual Christmas parade. Applications to participate in the parade are due by 5 p.m. on November 26th, and that is a firm deadline to receive. We'll have soft road closures beginning around 3:30 on that Saturday, and the parade again starts at 6. Staging will occur on East Main Street, around the river and towards the east, and on Short Street. And then the parade route is north on Arch, west on Main and then south on Wayne from Main Street to 13th Street. So just some information there for the benefit of the council and the listening public.
All right, thank you so much. Have you ordered your candy canes yet?
I actually, ironically, it's in my shopping cart, as a matter of fact.
Okay, very good. Okay.
You know, if you don't mind, I forgot to mention earlier, I had a couple of questions, if you know, in response now, but just sort of, so folks know that have asked me about it, know that I'm actually asking about it. Are the Alston Court speed limit signs, the status of those and the installation on those?
I think they were installed either today or yesterday, so they're
Look at-
morning.
Look at
Yes,
that.
Look
sir.
at that, yeah, they have a, okay, that's great, thank you so much. I know the residents out there appreciate it. The other is I've had a couple of folks that have tagged me in some social media stuff yesterday, today, about pedestrian crossing, walk lights and signal heads that are, particularly around the high school, that are out of service and
Right.
are bagged. And so just wanted to sort of stress, you know, I think how I feel, and I imagine like colleagues would feel about the urgency of getting those replaced. I'm sure there's a story behind it, but
So
There is
we
a story.
We appreciate the urgency. We are working as diligently as we can with the staff that we have, and under the circumstances of how those facilities come to not be in service anymore. So we'll make sure that we're doing all that we can to get them fixed. And we are aware that especially the Broad Street one has been out for some time. I think there's a insurance entanglement that we're dealing with.
I didn't even have to tell me, that's what I kind of figured it
So-
was,
Yeah.
but, okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
Yep.
for clarifying that, Mr. Hamp. Okay, item 11 is there a motion to adjourn this
I'll
meeting?
make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Short. All in favor, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned.